Chapter 31. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ancient 7 Mystic Transformations. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios Holy **T. What happened here? Half a day later, Chen Beixian, who was traveling leisurely, was dumbfounded. He looked at the trees in front of him that were filled with broken limbs and internal organs. The ground within a 10-mile radius was stained dark red with blood, like a bloody hell. Chen Beixian, the reincarnation emperor who had experienced countless battles, was not frightened, but his heart was filled with doubts. Did such an intense and tragic battle happen here in my previous life? Why haven't I heard of it before? Chen Beixian slowly looked around and saw a very familiar weapon. He raised his eyebrows. Isn't this Wang Qingshuan's subordinate, Mo Ya's resentful bone whip? Why is it here? As a reborn person, Chen Beixian also knew the identity of Wang Qingxian, a spy from the demon cult. In his previous life, Wang Qingxian was successfully elected as the Dao child of the Empyrean Sword sect. He was a planted spy coordinating with the demon cult outside, and eventually the Empyrean Sword sect was destroyed by the demon cult. Chen Beixian had almost died in the war between the Empyrean Sword sect and the demon cult. In this life, he wanted to protect the Empyrean Sword sect. And to resolve the hatred back then, Chen Beixian decided to kill Wang Qingxian. However, he did not have the power to do that now. He was prepared to collect opportunities and transform them into sufficient power before finding an opportunity to attack. Mo Ya was one of Wang Qingshuan's capable subordinates. The weapon in his hand, the resentful bone whip, had left a deep impression on Chen Beixian. In his previous life, when Chen Beixian escaped from the Empyrean Sword sect, he had been hunted down by Mo Ya. It took a few twists and turns to kill Mo Ya and escape. Unexpectedly, as soon as he was reborn in this life, Mo Ya was killed. Chen Beixian had a bad feeling. He thought of Shen Ran, who was unknown in his previous life but became famous in this life. As I expected, because of my rebirth, the heavenly Tao has changed. All the developments have changed slightly compared to my previous life. Chen Beixian instantly quickened his pace towards the hidden Dragon Mountain. I have to quickly collect the opportunities from my previous life. Otherwise, no one knows what kind of accident will happen. Meanwhile, Shen Ran, who had long arrived at the hidden Dragon Mountain, walked around the mountain several times. He finally found hidden in the canyon the place where the true dragon had fallen. Looking at the spring water that was constantly emitting an ancient aura, Shen Ran nodded in satisfaction. This must be the true dragon blood spring recorded in the narrative. A moment later, without hesitation, he stripped off all his clothes and soaked himself in the spring. As soon as his skin touched the cold spring water, be it the Panga's sacred body, the supreme bone, the ancient immortal eyes, or the heavenly spirit root, they began to crazily absorb the power of the true dragon inside. Shen Ran sat cross-legged in the spring and circulated the ancient 7 mystic transformations. The ancient 7 mystic transformations, inherited from the Azure Supreme, was extremely vast and complicated. All the relevant cultivation information had been poured into Shen Ran's mind. However, to this day, Shen Ran had yet to complete the first transformation of the ancient 7 mystic transformations, the Azure Dragon transformation. Now bathed in the spring formed by the true dragon bloodline, Shen Ran immediately felt that he had miraculously begun to quickly understand the content of the Azure Dragon transformation. In the spring, he absorbed more and more of the true dragon power. In his mind, the information about the Azure Dragon transformation began to become clearer. Finally, the last trace of true dragon power in the spring was completely absorbed by Shen Ran. There was a boom. The complicated flow of information was completely understood and digested by Shen Ran. He was fully enlightened. He had completely mastered the first transformation of the ancient 7 mystic transformations, Azure Dragon transformation. Roar! Shenran suddenly opened his eyes, and a loud dragon roar that could resound through the 9 heavens erupted from his throat. In a split second, dark clouds began to roll in the originally bright sky. Thunder rumbled from the depths, echoing Shenran's dragon roar. Roar! Another dragon roar. In the depths of Shenran's body, who was sitting cross-legged in the spring water, there was actually a power of lightning filled with destructive aura. The next second, Shenran's body floated up into the air and quickly escaped into the thick clouds that contained endless lightning. Crack! A thick bolt of lightning struck Shenran. However, not only was he not injured at all, he even directly absorbed the power of lightning. He felt extremely carefree. Again. Shenran shouted at the surrounding dark clouds. Endless lightning seemed to have received an order and rushed to strike Shenran. In just a few seconds, Shenran's body had been baptized by tens of thousands of lightning bolts as thick as a bucket. Roar! A dragon roar that was suppressed to the extreme and suddenly erupted from Shenran's mouth spread in all directions. However, in the blink of an eye, Shenran had transformed into an azure dragon that was hiding in the lightning and emitting a destructive aura. Its massive body blotted out the sky. With a slap of its long tail, numerous cracks appeared in the space. At this moment, Shenran felt that his strength was at least 100 times stronger than when he was in his human form. He transformed into an azure dragon and controlled the 9 heavens, summoning the wind and rain. This was the azure dragon transformation of the ancient 7 mystic transformations. Chapter 32. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Where's my opportunity? Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, Roar. Shenran, who had transformed into an azure dragon, roamed freely in the sky. At this moment, he had the body of a 10,000-foot true dragon that covered the sky. Every spirit tablet that was as hard as black steel emitted the terrifying might of a true dragon. Every breath was filled with endless lightning. The already powerful Pangu's sacred body had been strengthened 100-fold. Shenran was confident that after he practiced the azure dragon transformation, even an illumination realm cultivator would not be a match for him. Finally it circled the air twice. Shenran slowly landed and returned to his human form. Sensing that his spiritual energy was almost empty, he couldn't help but feel helpless. After transforming into an azure dragon, my strength can be increased by 100 times. Unfortunately, the consumption of spiritual energy for the true dragon transformation is also extremely terrifying. With my 7th level Divine Sea Realm cultivation, the spiritual energy in my body could only barely support my transformation into an azure dragon for less than a minute. It seems that this azure dragon transformation can't be used casually. It can only be used as a final trump card. Muttering to himself, Shenran kept massaging his swollen and aching limbs. Not only did the azure dragon transformation consume a lot of spiritual energy, but it also placed a heavy burden on the body. At this moment, not only did Shenran have the strongest physique in the world, known as the Pangus sacred body. There was also the wood spirit body that had a terrifying self-healing ability after absorbing the 10,000 wood spirit marrow. In just a minute, all the organs in the depths of his body had suffered varying degrees of damage. The recovery ability of the Pangus sacred body and the wood spirit body was circulated to the extreme. Only then did his injured body gradually recover. However, this did not affect Shenran's mood. After all, he had completely mastered a cultivation technique that could instantly increase his strength by 100 times. This was the inheritance of the strongest human in history, the Azure Supreme Arch inheritance. He was looking forward to the time when his future realm was enough for him to transform into a dragon at will, to fly into the sky and burrow into the ground. At the same time, he also looked forward to what kind of surprise the remaining 6 transformations of the ancient 7 mystic transformations would bring him. Alright, there's no time to lose. It's time to get the opportunity to obtain the Peerless Sword God's sword technique, the heaven-splitting technique. After his thoughts settled, Shen Ran sorted out his thoughts. Then, he set off for the Black Mountain. There was a nest of Black Mountain bandits who occupied an important trade route and committed robbery everywhere. It was said that the leader of the Black Mountain bandits was a divine sea realm expert. Faced with the robbery by the Black Mountain bandits, the cries of complaints from the surrounding merchant caravans filled the roads. He had no choice but to raise enough remuneration to ask the disciples of the Empyrean Sword sect to take action and issue a mission, hoping to deal with the group of Black Mountain bandits. Of course, this mission to eliminate the bandits was a matter only in passing. The biggest reason Shen Ran went to the Black Mountain was the opportunity hidden behind it. Half a day later. Crash! Chen Beixian used his palm to retrieve a handful of spring water from the depths of the Hidden Dragon Canyon. Looking at the Hidden Dragon Mountain spring water that was no different from ordinary spring water except for its cold and spotless clarity, Chen Beixian frowned. On the way here, he noticed that the clear sky had suddenly darkened. Dark clouds rolled in and thunder rumbled. Above the clouds, a towering dragon body loomed, darkening the sky. Even from thousands of miles away, he could feel the terrifying dragon might emitted by the dragon's shadow. That was true dragon might. Just now, the weather changed and lightning flashed. There was a true dragon with great power in the sky. Others might not know, but Chen Beixian, who had been reborn in the future, was certain that what was swimming in the air just now was a living true dragon. After all, in the future, he would be one of the top humans, the Reincarnation Emperor. Not only had he seen the so-called true dragons, but he had also killed many of them with his own hands. In fact, one of the Reincarnation Emperor's hobbies was to drink dragon blood and eat dragon hearts raw. But now that he had been reborn, he was only at the third level of the divine sea realm. If a true dragon wanted to deal with him, any breath could turn him to ashes. Could it be that the true dragon in my previous life that should have died in this hidden dragon mountain didn't die? Chen Beixian's frown deepened. Although that true dragon which should be on the verge of death has temporarily descended on this hidden dragon mountain like in my previous life. But he's not dead. Therefore, there is no spring water formed from the blood of the true dragon. Emoya, who should have been killed by him, appeared in his mind. It seems that after my rebirth, the changes in the heavenly Tao and the development of everything are even more exaggerated than I originally imagined. Chen Beixian was shocked. Could it be that the opportunities that should have belonged to me in my previous life no longer exist after I was reborn? Thinking of this, Chen Beixian sped up and rushed to the place where he had killed the traitor of the sect in his previous life. He desperately wanted to know if other than those opportunities that did not belong to him, whether his own opportunities still existed in this life. Chen Beixian had been as mediocre as he was now in his previous life. It was through one opportunity after another that he could become a true emperor and reincarnation emperor. If all the opportunities disappeared after his rebirth, Chen Beixian would probably only be able to reach the illumination realm with his talent. If he could not return to the peak above the peak, what was the point of him being reborn as a youth? Chapter 33. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Drawing Technique. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios Evening, Black Mountain. After traveling at full speed, before the sky turned dark, Shen Ran crossed more than 6,000 miles and arrived at the foot of the mountain. At this moment, the setting sun in the distance dyed the entire Black Mountain golden. However, he could vaguely see some buildings on the mountainside which were the main purpose of his journey, the base camp of the Black Mountain bandits. Without hesitation, Shen Ran headed straight for the mountain. Halt! Who are you? Do you know what lies ahead? Halfway along the road, a few robbers who were patrolling outside the mountain gate noticed him. They immediately shouted sternly, in an imposing manner. Shen Ran glanced around and realized that there were a total of 8 robbers. Their cultivation levels were all at the 5th or 6th level of qi refinement, not worth mentioning. Are you not going to say anything? You're courting death. The robbers looked at Shen Ran, who looked calm, and drew their weapons. Immediately, Shenran moved. Shwa. An indistinct fuzzy shadow flashed in front of all the robbers. The 8 robbers who were making their moves froze in place. Shenran's figure slowly appeared behind them. As if nothing had happened, he continued up the mountain. Behind him were the 8 frozen robbers. Then there was a light evening breeze. Poochie. Thud. The 8 robbers who had been frozen in place were originally safe and sound. Everyone's bodies suddenly twisted. Some of the heads collapsed onto their chests. Some had their sternums caved in and sank into large pits, their backs arched high. Others turned their heads 180 degrees and twisted their necks into knots. In a moment, they were dead and fell to the ground in succession. Shenran went all the way up the mountain. From time to time, he saw teams of robbers patrolling outside. Shenran insta-killed the robbers before they even noticed him. It didn't take long. Shenran had already arrived at the entrance of the base camp of the Black Mountain Bandits. The road behind him was filled with corpses of mountain bandits with twisted limbs. By a rough estimate, Shenran had killed more than 100 robbers. Basically, he had killed all the robbers who were patrolling and wandering outside. They were all insta-killed. The rest was all back at base camp. From the doorway, he could hear the raucous voices of the robbers. He could sense that there were at least 200 people inside. However, their cultivation levels were not high. Basically, it was no more than the Qi refinement realm. Only 1 or 2 auras were stronger than the divine sea realm. They were probably the leaders of the Black Mountain Bandits. Shenran did not hesitate and walked in. "Brother, you're back. Come, drink. After drinking, have fun with the pussies you caught at the foot of the mountain 2 days ago." As soon as Shenran entered, he saw a robber who reeked of alcohol and could not even walk steadily. A glance at his narrative. This is a member of a bandit organization that has occupied the Black Mountain. He has followed the leader of the Black Mountain Bandits and committed all kinds of crimes. He is about to die. "Brother, why aren't you saying anything? Hurry up and drink. After that, have fun with women." Seeing that Shenran did not speak, the drunk robber continued, "We have to hurry. Otherwise, those women will be tortured to death by the other brothers." "Oh, that's not right. Those women were captured yesterday and have long been tortured to death. Sigh, there are no more women tonight." The robber shook his head and sighed. Shenran's eyes narrowed. These robbers, damn them. In a flash, Shenran moved in front of the drunk robber. He punched out. Bang! The robber's head exploded like a watermelon. The headless body fell to the ground with a muffled groan, scattering red and white objects. Shenran did not even turn his head and quickly walked into the bandits' camp. Then he moved like the wind, shuttling back and forth in the bandit camp, killing all the bandits he encountered. In the depths of the bandits' camp, a muscular robber with a fierce face had just finished his cultivation and walked out of the room. He glanced around, doubt forming in his gaze. He waved his hand and summoned a shifty-looking subordinate not far away. "Second in command, were you looking for me?" The shifty-looking robber smiled obsequiously. "Did Chief bring people out to collect the goods again?" The rough-looking second in command asked. "No, Chief has also been cultivating in his residence for the entire day and hasn't gone out yet. Without you and Chief's orders, our brothers are all staying in the base camp to drink and have fun," his subordinate replied. "No one went out." The second in command frowned as he listened to the exceptionally quiet base camp. "Since no one went out, why is it so quiet?" Hearing this, the robber opposite him was also stunned. Earlier on, he just had fun with the woman he had killed last night and yet to get rid of. He did not pay much attention. After hearing what the second in command said, he realized that something was wrong. Usually, at this time, the robbers would be drinking and partying in full swing. How could the base camp be so deserted? Something is not right. The second in command of the robbers suddenly felt a little uneasy. Go and find the chief. I'll go to the base camp to take a look. Yes. The robber did not dare to delay. He nodded repeatedly and went out. Bang! Unexpectedly, as soon as he took a step, the shifty dead-eyed robber exploded into pieces. Who is it? The second in command looked at the door and shouted angrily. Chapter 34. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Flattening the Black Mountain. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, a disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect, has come to destroy the Black Mountain bandits. An ethereal figure that looked like an immortal slowly appeared. It was Shinran, who had cleared the Black Mountain bandits' base camp. As Shinran appeared, the second in command of the robbers realized that the Black Mountain was filled with an extremely strong smell of blood. Damn it! It's actually someone from the Empyrean Sword sect. Didn't Master say that the Empyrean Sword sect wouldn't care about trivial matters like robberies? The second in command's expression changed drastically. Although this group of Black Mountain bandits usually committed all kinds of crimes, they also knew what kind of people they could afford to offend and what kind of forces they could not afford to offend. He immediately took out a whistle carved in the shape of a black eagle, put it to his mouth, and blew hard. Chant! An extremely loud eagle cry immediately resounded throughout the entire Black Mountain. This was a signal that an extremely urgent situation had occurred. When all the surviving robbers heard this cry, they immediately stopped what they were doing and rushed over to the second in command as quickly as possible. He listened to the dense, hurried footsteps around him. Shinran smiled calmly. Are you going to call all the robbers over? You really saved me a lot of effort. As a thank you, I'll let you die quickly. When the second in command heard this, he immediately frowned and was furious. How dare you? This is not a place for you to be impudent. As he spoke, his first-level divine sea strength erupted. His exaggerated muscles that were as knotted as the roots of an old tree kept squirming and expanding. The 1.85 tall second in command of the robbers expanded again and again. In the blink of an eye, he turned into a huge beast that was 3 meters tall. His skin turned red, and the dense spiderweb of blood vessels on his body protruded and throbbed. His entire body seemed to have transformed into a human-shaped furnace, and the infinite heat surged out of his body. Just by looking at it, one could feel the explosive power from it. Thud. At this moment, Shinran, who was standing opposite the second in command of the robbers, moved. The second in command, who was originally dozens of feet away from Shinran, felt his vision go blurred. Shinran suddenly flashed in front of him. Shinran clenched his fist and raised his arm high. All his muscles tensed and expanded, and all his strength gathered on his arm. I told you, I'll let you die a quick death. Shinran looked at the second in command with a cold gaze. It was like looking at another dead person. You have a death wish. Hearing this, the second in command of the robbers was furious. He raised his fist high and was about to smash it down. At that moment, Shinran raised his fist and punched forward. In the eyes of the second in command of the robbers, this punch was very slow. He could see the trajectory of the punch clearly. There was no commotion either. However, for some unknown reason, he could not move his body at all. All he could do was to stare helplessly as the golden fist inched closer to his chest. He watched helplessly as his chest caved in bit by bit under the push of Shinran's fist. Crack. 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 The sound of a sternum breaking echoed clearly and distinctly in the second in command's ears. The second in command of the robbers did not feel any pain. He only wondered when his body had become so fragile. He could not even withstand a punch. The breastbone defense finally broke. Shenran's fist pressed against the second in command's lungs. Not even his sternum could defend him, let alone his soft lungs. His lungs burst. Shenran's fist finally hit the second in command's spine from the inside out. Piece by piece, his spine snapped under the punch. It penetrated his back and came out of his body. I'm dead. Seeing that the ground was getting further and further away from him, his body exploded into pieces in front of Shenran and blood splattered everywhere. The head of the bandit's second in command, flying through the air, thought with the last remnants of his consciousness. Bang! The head crashed to the ground. The second in command of the Black Mountain Bandits was dead. At this moment, the robbers who had just heard the whistle for assembling, arrived one after another. It's the second in command. The second in command was actually killed by him. Among all the robbers, the second in command, whose strength was second only to the first in command, was beheaded. All the robbers were horrified. Other than the two leaders, none of them had reached the 9th level of the Qi refinement realm. Faced with such a scene, they were scared out of their wits and fled in all directions. Shenran saw this. Without any hesitation, he rushed into the crowd and started a massacre. With every punch, a robber's head or chest was blasted open. Ever since Shenran came up the mountain, he had only used his physical strength. A scum like the Black Mountain Bandit was not worthy of him using his cultivation and the Divine Sword Emperor's heart. In just a few seconds, more than half of the robbers present were killed by Shenran. The remaining people had also given up on the idea of escaping. They knelt on the ground and kowtowed to him, begging for mercy. Who dares to be impudent in my Black Mountain? Why don't you stop? At this moment, an angry shout resounded throughout the venue. The robbers, who were in a state of panic, were overjoyed. It's the chief. Chief is here. This kid is dead. Chief, avenge our brothers. Chapter 35. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Heaven-splitting technique. Translator. Atlas Studios editor. Atlas Studios. Shenran looked over. This is the leader of the Black Mountain Bandits. He was originally an ordinary disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect. He knew that his potential had been exhausted and that it would be difficult for him to break through. His future on the path of cultivation was hopeless. Therefore, he chose to leave the mountain and gathered people to form a gang of bandits who caused trouble. He was filled with evil and was about to die. This leader of the Black Mountain Bandits is actually a disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect. No wonder the sect usually doesn't accept missions entrusted by the mortal world, but this time, there's an exception. So there's a traitor here. Shenran looked at the newcomer with flickering eyes. Alright, I'll clean up the sect today. Senior brother from the Empyrean Sword sect. The bandit leader's expression changed when he saw the green robe that represented Shenran's identity as a disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect. It was precisely because he was once a disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect that he knew that sects generally did not care about worldly chores. That was why he chose to leave the sect and form the current bandit gang. He did not expect to see a disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect today who came to destroy his bandit gang. It seemed that the sect had already discovered that he was the leader of the Black Mountain Bandits. Just as the leader of the Black Mountain Bandits was debating whether to fight or run, from the corner of his eye, he saw that 8th Summit's first disciple, token on Shenran's waist. This made his heart feel like it was being squeezed by an invisible big hand. Plop. The robber leader knelt down in front of Shenran. Yu Qi greets first senior brother. The robbers, whose hopes had just been ignited by the appearance of the leader, were dumbfounded. They hadn't expected this to happen. The robber, Yu Qi, naturally noticed his subordinates' gazes. However, a wise man submits to circumstances. If the person who came was an ordinary disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect, then he might still want to fight him. However, the person who came was the first senior brother of a mountain peak. His strength was top-notch among ordinary disciples. How could he fight that person? Yu Chi was very straightforward and wanted to beg for mercy. Chief Senior Brother, can you spare my life for the sake of our camaraderie? With that, he actually moved behind one of the Black Mountain bandits and snapped his subordinate's neck. His action sent a chill down the spines of the surrounding robbers. Yu Chi ignored the rest and continued to kneel on the ground. Senior Brother, I've deeply realized my mistake. As a disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect, I shouldn't discredit the sect. There's no need to trouble Senior Brother with the remaining bandits. I'll deal with them myself. Senior Brother, please let me off. As he spoke, Yu Chi looked up and met Shen Ran's cold gaze. His heart skipped a beat. It seemed that this Senior Brother did not intend to let him off. I'm going to die anyway. I'll kill you. Yu Chi was forced into a corner. Instead, he became ruthless and his expression was ferocious. He stood up and unleashed his 4th-level Divine Sea Realm cultivation to the limit. He did not know if his potential had erupted in despair. The bottleneck that had stuck him for so many years actually cracked at this moment. The aura on his body doubled again. He directly broke through to the 5th level of the Divine Sea Realm. Yu Chi roared with laughter. This is fate. I didn't expect that I would be able to break through at this moment. It seems that the Heaven Duke doesn't want me to die either. There was suddenly hope in his heart. After all, at the 5th level of the Divine Sea Realm, he could also be a chief disciple of the Empyrean Sword sect. Even if he had broken through at the last minute, even if he was not Shen Ran's match today, he still had a chance to escape. The next second Yu Chi's wild laughter stopped. Shen Ran's palm directly entered his open mouth when he was laughing wildly. 5 slender fingers pierced through the back of Yu Chi's head. Yu Chi's vitality was quickly dissipating. Looking at Shen Ran's disgusted gaze, he only had one sentence in his heart. Why are you so fast? Why are you so strong? Plop. Shen Ran pulled his palm back. Yu Chi's body crashed to the ground. Then Shen Ran turned his gaze to the remaining Black Mountain bandits. Being swept by an extremely cold gaze, everyone couldn't help but shiver. Run, run. Run for your life. Please, let me go. The robbers immediately panicked. Some fled, others fell to their knees and begged for mercy. But no matter what, Shen Ran just moved in front of the robbers and kept punching. A moment later. The robbers were dead or wounded. Only one survived. Sir, spare me. Spare me. The robber was completely terrified. He knelt on the ground, and kept kowtowing and begging for mercy. Tell me, where do you hide your treasures here? Shen Ran asked coldly. It's where the leader lives. There's a cellar there. All the treasures we've robbed are kept there. I've already told you. Please don't kill me. The robber said everything he knew in one breath and continued to kowtow and beg for mercy. Shen Ran was silent and killed him with a punch. Then he went to the leader's residence and entered the cellar inside. He found almost 10,000 spirit stones. This was naturally not as good as the opportunities he had collected previously, but it was still a gain. So far, the sect mission was all completed. It was time for Shen Ran to go to the back mountain to find the peerless sword god's inherited sword technique, the heaven-splitting technique. Chapter 36. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Obtaining the peerless sword god's inheritance. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, the mission has been completed. All the robbers have been cleared. The next step is to find opportunities. Shen Ran muttered to himself. Unfortunately, the narrative doesn't introduce the exact location of the opportunity every time. It takes a lot of effort to find it. The Black Mountain occupied a large area and the forest was dense. It was difficult to find a cave here which kept the sword god's inheritance. But no matter how difficult it was, he still had to search. Shenran sighed. He had spent a lot of effort to find each opportunity previously. He stopped grumbling. Shenran went up the mountain and began to search all the caves in the Black Mountain. In the Empyrean Sword Sect Mission Hall. An ordinary disciple was choosing a mission that was suitable for him. He had just broken through and was about to accept a sect mission to train himself. However, for some reason, when he flipped through the mission book that recorded the sect's missions, not a single mission satisfied him. Suddenly, this ordinary disciple felt that something very important was about to leave him. He immediately felt empty and frustrated. He had no intention of accepting the mission. He closed the mission book and left the mission hall. Black Mountain. Shenran searched for a long time before finally stopping in front of an extremely hidden cave that was overgrown with weeds. He'd searched a dozen caves before. Among them, there were mainly animals hiding inside. As for this cave in front of him, not to mention the inside, there was not even an insect found at the entrance of the cave. In addition, just by standing at the entrance of the cave, one could hear waves of solemn killing intent coming from the cave. Bedo Dem Shenran was delighted. This is it. Without hesitation, he entered the cave. Swish. As soon as he entered the cave, a cold light that was dozens of feet long suddenly appeared from the depths of the cave. With an incomparably fierce aura, as if it could cut through all obstacles, it instantly crossed dozens of feet and shot towards Shenran. This cold light came so quickly and caught him off guard. If it were anyone else, with the dangerous aura emitted by the cold light, they would probably be split into two. However, Shenran's expression was calm. Without dodging, he shot out with one hand to meet the cold light directly. Break. Boom. His voice trailed off. Shenran's palm collided with the cold light. The menacing cold light was directly smashed into pieces and splattered. The surrounding stone walls of the cave were instantly engraved with countless deep sword marks by the cold light fragments. On Shenran's palm was also left an inch of sword light, in the confrontation just now. It had to be known that he had the powerful Pangu's sacred body, but he was still injured by the cold light. And this cold light must have come from the sword mark left behind by the peerless sword god. I didn't expect this, heaven-splitting technique, to be so powerful with just a trace of sword mark left behind. Not bad. This opportunity is worth taking. Shenran was not shocked but delighted. The scar on his hand healed instantly under the effect of the wood spirit power emitted by the wood spirit body. Shenran continued deeper into the cave. Before long, he reached the end of the cave. Here, a 2-meter tall boulder stood quietly. On the boulder, there was a sword mark that almost cut the entire boulder into half. The sword mark was filled with a sharp sword intent. A monstrous killing intent spread out, sharp to the extreme. Even with the ancient immortal eyes, Shenran felt his eyes sting with just one look. As expected of the sword intent left behind by the strongest peerless sword god in the world. Shenran's eyes lit up. If I can comprehend the endless sword intent in the sword mark, can I learn the technique of the peerless sword god, the sky-splitting technique? His thoughts settled. Shenran closed his eyes and calmed himself. When he opened his eyes to look at the sword mark again, he immediately had a different experience. In addition to top-notch cultivation talents such as the Supreme Bone, Pangu's Sacred Body, Ancient Immortal Eyes, and Heavenly Spirit Root, the narrative modified by Shenran also included various top-notch learning talents. This included his max-level Sword Dao talent. As long as it was knowledge about the Sword Dao, Shenran only needed to calm down and take a look, and be able to master it and grasp the essence. When he opened his eyes again, Shenran was in a calm state. This time the world in his eyes had changed. There were no more boulders, no more caves. The sky, the earth, space, and time, all external influences, no longer exist. In Shenran's eyes, there was only the sword mark left by the peerless sword god. In an instant, huge and complicated sword knowledge surged into his mind like a river entering the sea. In a daze, Shenran seemed to see the peerless sword god who had left this sword mark, standing in front of him. He taught him personally and imparted to him the details of the heaven-splitting technique. Shenran's understanding of sword intent and the heaven-splitting technique increased at an unbelievable speed. Meanwhile, his body was also continuously emitting sword cries. At first, the sword cry was still faint, but as time passed, it continued to rise. If anyone was present at this moment, they would realize that Shenran no longer looked like a person. Instead, he was like a peerless divine sword that was slowly unsheathed, revealing its sharpness. Clang! The sound of the sword suddenly rose to the extreme. An extremely violent sword intent suddenly came from Shenran's body, as if it could cut through everything. Chapter 37. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Next opportunity. Sword Technique, Yin Yang Break. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, Split the Heaven. Shenran suddenly opened his eyes. The gaze that shot out from his eyes was almost corporeal. If anyone was standing in his gaze at this moment, they would probably be pierced through by his gaze. This terrifying power did not come from the ancient immortal eyes. It came from the supreme sword which was on Shenran's chest. Sharp enough to cut through all obstacles. Ding! A crisp sound came from the divine sword Emperor's heart on Shenran's back. As if sensing that its master had comprehended the supreme sword intent, now acting as one who carries wisdom and intelligence, it was overjoyed. Clang! Shenran pulled out his Emperor's heart. Holding the hilt of the Emperor's heart, he realized that his connection with the Emperor's heart bloodline had improved. The heaven-splitting technique. Sword skill, Yin Yang Break. Shenran shouted softly. The Emperor's heart in his hand slashed forward. A 10,000-foot sword beam emitted an incomparably fierce aura with a matchless dazzling golden light, spread forward with an incomparably dazzling golden light. Boom! The earth shook. Space trembled. This sword was dazzling, brilliant, and dazzling to the extreme. As the name suggested, this sword technique could even cut through the heaven. Phew! Shenran exhaled softly and slowly sheathed the Emperor's heart. The boulder in front of him had been cut in half by the sword. Not only the huge rock in front of him, but the entire cave and the entire black mountain that was 10,000 feet tall were cut in half by his sword. When Shenran saw his sword, a satisfied expression appeared on his face. This sword technique from the peerless sword god, the heaven-splitting technique, was indeed extraordinary. 2 short days passed. Not only did he bathe in dragon blood spring water and master the first transformation of the ancient 7 mystic transformations, the Azure Dragon transformation. He could transform into the Azure Dragon, summon the wind and rain and control the lightning. He had also comprehended the peerless sword technique, the heaven-splitting technique, which had terrifying lethality. This trip was worth it. Indeed, if he wanted to increase his strength rapidly, he had to rely on collecting opportunities. However, there's another flaw in this trip. My cultivation level hasn't increased. I'm still at the 7th level of the Divine Sea Realm. Shenran suddenly sighed. Then, he thought of the day he saw one of the opportunities in Chenbeixian. On February 20th, a month later, the Chaos Divine Fruit ripened in the depths of the Grand Myriad Mountains. Legend has it that the Chaos Divine Fruit can increase the aptitude of the user by a large realm. It's a rare divine fruit that only ripens once every 5,000 years. I have to obtain it. While thinking, Shenran slowly frowned. But Chenbeixian, who has grasped this opportunity, is different from others. He is reborn from the future. Others don't know what opportunity they will obtain in the future, but Chenbeixian knows very well. He is probably more concerned about this chaos divine fruit than anyone else. It seems that I have to go to the Grand Myriad Mountains first to determine where the Chaos Divine fruit grew. When it matures, I can pluck it immediately. Otherwise, if things go on like before, Chen Beixian will probably be the first to succeed. Thinking of this, Shen Ran did not stay any longer. Without stopping, he rushed towards the Grand Myriad Mountains. Chen Beixian moved through a dense forest. His eyes kept looking around. He seemed to be searching for something with great urgency. Clang! Suddenly, Chen Beixian's face lit up and he unsheathed his sword. His sword glowed with a cold light and pierced through a thick tree in front of him at an extremely fast speed. Ah! The moment Chen Beixian's sword pierced through the tree trunk, a mournful scream sounded. He used his sword to pierce through the tree in front of him, and hot and fishy blood flowed out. A figure leaning against the tree trunk slowly emerged. It turned out that Chen Beixian's sword had not only pierced through the tree trunk, but also through this person's heart. At this moment, he was wearing a green robe that represented the ordinary disciple of the Empyrean sword sect. It was the traitor of the sect who had mastered the breath control technique, the hidden mountain tiger. The hidden mountain tiger felt its life force draining away. His red eyes were fixed on the expressionless Chen Beixian. The hidden mountain tiger could not figure out how the other party had discovered him. Breath control was a technique he had obtained in an ancient tomb. It had an extremely powerful hiding ability and could perfectly conceal its aura. Back then, he had used the breath control technique to successfully steal treasures from the Empyrean sword sect and escape. Even the elder of the Empyrean sword sect who was chasing after him could not find his whereabouts. However, this ordinary disciple in front of him seemed to be completely unaffected by the breath control technique and directly found him. Without hesitation, he drew his sword and pierced his heart. Chen Beixian could naturally see the doubt in the hidden mountain tiger's eyes, but he couldn't be bothered to explain. He twisted the hilt in his hand and directly crushed the hidden mountain tiger's heart, taking its life. In his previous life, Chen Beixian had spent a lot of effort to kill the hidden mountain tiger and obtain the breath control technique from him. However, after being reborn 10,000 years later, Chen Beixian, who had already killed the hidden mountain tiger once, had long mastered the breath control technique. Naturally, he could see through the flaws in the breath control technique. Chen Beixian heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the hidden mountain tiger had been killed by him just like in his previous life. It seems that although the heavenly Tao has changed, it's only those opportunities that shouldn't belong to me that have changed and prevented me from obtaining them. But the opportunity that belonged to me in my previous life remained unchanged. So next month, no one will compete with me for the Chaos Divine fruit which will ripen on February 20th. It will still belong to me. Chapter 38. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Go. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios late at night. At the 9 peaks of the Empyrean sword sect. An atmosphere of tranquility. The disciples in the sect were either working hard and in a cultivation state. Or, like an ordinary person without cultivation, they were falling asleep. At this moment, unless there was something important, no one would choose to step into the Grand Myriad Mountains late at night. The Grand Myriad Mountains at night. They belonged to those primordial ferocious beasts. Countless hungry primordial ferocious beasts could be hiding in any corner of the Grand Myriad Mountains. They would wait for their prey to appear before killing them with a single strike. At this moment, they were much more bloodthirsty and dangerous than during the day. Shua, a figure in green clothes representing the ordinary disciples of the Empyrean sword sect, stepped into the Grand Myriad Mountains at an extremely fast speed. The figure's black hair flowed like a waterfall. His face was as white as jade, his eyebrows were sharp, and his temperament was ethereal. A token hung on his waist with the words, "First Disciple of the 8th Summit," written on it. The figure that was rushing along the depths of the Grand Myriad Mountains was Shen Ran. After obtaining the opportunity left behind by the peerless sword god in the Black Mountain, he rushed back without stopping. It took him 4 hours to travel more than 5,000 miles. He had no choice. Although the Chaos Divine Fruit would only appear in a month's time, he was not the only one who knew when it would mature. There was also Chen Beixian, who had been reborn 10,000 years later. In order to successfully obtain the ripe Chaos Divine Fruit, Shen Ran planned to find the exact location of the Chaos Divine Fruit in advance and guard it. As soon as it ripened, he would pluck it. Shen Ran quickened his pace. He moved like the wind and searched all the places where the Chaos Divine Fruit might grow. Along the way, Shen Ran also encountered many hungry primordial ferocious beasts. Shen Ran did not want to waste time on them. He would pull out his emperor's heart the moment the primordial ferocious beasts looked at him. He cut into half the primordial ferocious beasts that was hostile to him. As he continued to explore and go deeper, he finally came to a stele. This stone tablet was erected by the Empyrean Sword sect. Crossing over this stone tablet meant that he had set foot in the most dangerous territory of the Grand Myriad Mountains. Although there were many primordial ferocious beasts in the area before crossing over the stone tablet, their realms were almost no higher than the 6th level of the Divine Sea realm. However, as long as he crossed this stone tablet, it meant that Shen Ran would be facing at least a 7th level Divine Sea realm primordial vicious beasts. There were even many primordial ferocious beasts at the Illumination realm. However, Shen Ran only stopped in front of the stone tablet for a moment before deciding to step into the Grand Myriad Mountains behind the stone tablet. Other than searching the area inside the stone tablet and still not finding the location where the Chaos Divine Fruit grew, Shen Ran also had the confidence to face primordial ferocious beasts at the Illumination realm. Although he was only at the 7th level of the Divine Sea realm now. However, it was different from ordinary 7th level Divine Sea realm cultivators. The spiritual energy stored in his Divine Sea had been compressed and purified by the Heavenly Spirit Root and enhanced by the Supreme Bone. It could be said that just a drop of golden spiritual energy in Shen Ran's body was equivalent to the full cultivation of 100 ordinary 7th level Divine Sea cultivators. Moreover, he also had the Panga sacred body, the Wood Spirit body, and the top physical body formed by the ancient immortal eyes. Even without cultivation, he was confident that he could face an existence at the Illumination realm with just his physical strength. In addition, there was also the Divine Sword Emperor's Heart and the Peerless Sword Technique, the Heaven-Splitting Technique, which also gave him confidence. At the very least, if he encountered primordial ferocious beasts that he really could not defeat, he could still use the Azure Dragon transformation and transform into a 10,000 feet true dragon body. Although he could only transform into a true dragon for a minute, it was enough for him to leave the depths of the Grand Myriad Mountains safely. He pondered over this. Shen Ran confidently stepped deeper into the Grand Myriad Mountains. Roar! Not long after Shen Ran stepped into the territory outside the stone tablet, he encountered the first 8th level Divine Sea realm primordial ferocious beast. Crimson Flame Ape. A beast more than 30 feet tall and covered in red fur. Every hair on its body was burning with red flames with terrifying temperature. Shen Ran's expression hardened. Clang! The Divine Sword Emperor's heart was unsheathed. A stream of sword light tore through the night. It slashed directly at the Crimson Flame Ape. Something unexpected happened. After being slashed by the Divine Sword Emperor's heart, a huge bone-deep wound instantly appeared on the huge body of the Crimson Flame Ape. Roar! The Crimson Flame Ape howled in pain. The flames on his body instantly became even stronger. Even the space around his body was distorted by the heat. You didn't die after taking my sword strike. Shen Ran was surprised. At the same time, the second and third swords slashed out in succession. Only then did he manage to cut down the head of the Crimson Flame Ape and ended its life. Shen Ran was extremely afraid. After crossing the stone tablet, I encountered the first primordial ferocious beast. It actually took me 3 strikes without using my cultivation to barely kill it. The deeper parts of the Grand Myriad Mountains are indeed dangerous. Shenran's expression was serious as he continued deeper into the Grand Myriad Mountains. Chapter 39. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Fighting. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios, boom. A golden sword aura shot into the sky. It seemed that even the sky was about to be cut in half. Looking at the huge body of the primordial ferocious beast that had been cut in half, Shenran's expression was a little solemn. Why are there such huge monsters more than 30 feet tall in the Grand Myriad Mountains after crossing over the stone tablet? Shenran's expression was serious as he frowned that it had taken me several sword strikes to kill that primordial ferocious beast. At this rate, even I will have my spiritual energy exhausted by the endless monsters that appear before I find the place where the chaos divine fruit grows. I remember that Chen Beixian is only at the 3rd level of the divine sea realm. How did he pass through this area filled with terrifying monsters and find the chaos divine fruit in his previous life? Meanwhile, in a good mood, Chen Beixian was leisurely walking back to the Empyrean sword sect. In my previous life, I was able to find the chaos divine fruit because of a heaven-defying opportunity. As Chen Beixian traveled, he recalled the past. At that time, I was hunting primordial ferocious beasts in the Grand Myriad Mountains and accidentally provoked a crimson flame ape that had crossed over the sect's stone tablet because it was extremely hungry. That beast was at the 8th level of the divine sea realm. At my 3rd level of the divine sea realm, I was not its match at all. Being chased and intercepted by it, there was no way to return to the sect to seek help. I had no choice but to hide deeper into the Grand Myriad Mountains. At that time, countless primordial ferocious beasts in the illumination realm were attracted to a hidden valley by the chaos divine fruit that was about to ripen. There was a violent battle between them over the divine fruit. Thinking of this, Chen Beixian couldn't help but feel glad. At that time, there was even a tiger turtle at the 5th level of the enlightenment realm in the valley. Fortunately, I was too weak at that time and relied on the breath control technique to manage to pick the chaos divine fruit. Back then, tens of thousands of illumination realm monsters had gathered. Unless one was an emperor realm expert, otherwise, even a duke realm cultivator would probably die on the spot. Other than me, who is able to go against heaven to obtain opportunity, who else can obtain the chaos divine fruit? Be no calm thinking of this, Chen Beixian couldn't help but laugh heartily. Finally. Found it. Shenran looked at the extremely hidden valley in front of him, his eyes shining. In the valley, there was a dense colorful aura floating, and an inexplicable fragrance kept floating out. Presumably, the chaos divine fruit grew here. Not only were the primordial ferocious beasts stronger on the outer area of the stone tablet, but they were also more aggressive than the primordial vicious beasts within the stone tablet area. Along the way, it could be said that all the primordial ferocious beasts that discovered him would attack him. Shenran found a valley road. He walked all the way. If he looked back now, he would see a whole road of dead bodies on the ground. In order to kill these primordial ferocious beasts, a third of Shenran's huge divine sea spiritual energy had been consumed. Although it would take another month for the chaos divine fruit to ripen. Shenran had long decided to camp here. Once the fruit ripened, he would pluck it. He walked into the valley. In the middle, there was a towering tree with 7-colored leaves and colorful lights surrounding it. At the treetop hung a crystalline fruit that emitted a dazzling light. That must be the unripe chaos divine fruit. After walking a few steps, Shenran reached out to touch the chaos tree trunk and muttered to himself. Suddenly, he realized that a powerful suction force had erupted from the tree trunk and was crazily absorbing the wood spirit chi that belonged to his wood spirit body. At the same time, the light emitted by the chaos divine fruit quickly became even more dazzling. The exotic fragrance emanating from it grew stronger. Could it be that the wood spirit body I obtained through the 10,000.year wood spirit marrow can accelerate the ripening of the chaos divine fruit? I don't have to wait another month. Shenran was delighted. He had not expected things to go this way. Not long after, almost all the wood spirit power in Shenran's body was extracted. The terrifying suction force from the tree trunk suddenly disappeared. Meanwhile, a seven-dot-colored pillar of light suddenly erupted from the chaos divine fruit. It shot into the sky and pierced the night sky, dazzling. At the same time, the fragrance emitted from the fruit erupted tens of thousands of times. Just by smelling it, Shenran felt that 1/3 of his spiritual energy had been replenished. The fruit is ripe. Shenran's face was filled with excitement and joy. He was about to reach out and pluck the ripe chaos divine fruit. Roar! A deafening sound exploded like thunder in a drought. A terrifying figure that blotted out the sky flipped over the mountain beside him and appeared in front of Shenran. An incomparably terrifying aura enveloped Shenran. It seemed to be warning Shenran to stay away from the chaos divine fruit. Shenran looked at the 1000-foot primordial ferocious beast with the body of a giant turtle and the head of a ferocious tiger turtle. Its eyes were cold. Even though he sensed that the other party was at the 5th level of the illumination realm, he was still not afraid. You beast, how dare you covet the chaos divine fruit that I ripened? You're courting death. All at once, Shenran was raging with anger. Chapter 40. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Explosive Strength. Stepping into Enlightenment. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Faced with a person the size of a grain of sand roaring at him, the tiger turtle did not care. He just raised his claws and slapped them down casually. He was prepared to slap Shenran to death. Unexpectedly, the tiger turtle suddenly felt an instinctive fear of the little person who appeared as sand-sized in his eyes. Roar! With a loud dragon roar. A 10,000 feet true dragon surrounded by a huge sea of clouds, with thunder force and power that could destroy the heaven and extinguish the earth, appeared in front of the tiger turtle. Shenran used his strongest trump card, Azure Dragon Transformation. Shenran, who had transformed into an azure dragon, could summon wind and rain, control lightning, and increase his strength by 100 times. Just now, he was just like a speck of dust in the eyes of the tiger turtle. At this moment, the tiger turtle, which was 1,000 feet long, was just a toy that he could crush with one claw. His huge dragon claws were wrapped in terrifying lightning as it grabbed at the tiger turtle, showing fear in its eyes. Wherever it passed, space could not withstand the extreme power of the true dragon, and dense spatial cracks appeared. Crack! The tiger turtle didn't even have time to resist or whine. It was directly crushed by Shenran's dragon claw. Its body and shell was immediately crushed. Then, Shenran did not stay. He directly flew into the sky and prepared to take advantage of the minute when he was transformed into a true dragon to wipe out all the primordial ferocious beasts attacking the chaos divine fruit. Something unexpected happened the moment he transformed into a true dragon. All the primordial ferocious beasts within a radius of 1,000,000 miles felt an instinctive fear and fled away. Shenran looked around and was surprised to find that there was not a single primordial ferocious beast in sight. After some thought, he figured out the cause and effect. Immediately, he did not stay in the air any longer to waste his transformation time. Back into the valley, back in human form. Shenran immediately plucked the chaos divine fruit. Since all the primordial ferocious beasts in a radius of 1,000,000 miles had fled because of the aura he had just emitted, then he had no other interference now. He simply sat cross-legged on the spot and swallowed the chaos divine fruit, preparing to absorb it. Boom! He swallowed the chaos divine fruit. Shenran felt countless heat currents flowing wildly from his abdomen to his entire body. The supreme bone, the Panga's sacred body, the ancient immortal eyes, and the heavenly spirit root became unprecedentedly active. Crazily absorbing the power from the chaos divine fruit. Shenran's realm was also rising at an extremely terrifying speed. 8th level of the Divine Sea Realm. Ninth level of the Divine Sea Realm. 10th level of the Divine Sea Realm. Then, an invisible but real bottleneck was broken. Shenran felt that his spiritual energy was no longer restricted to the Divine Sea, but was directly connected to heaven and earth. From now on, he could directly use the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, with power from heaven and earth, to engage in combat. First level of the Illumination Realm. With the help of the Chaos Divine Fruit, Shenran actually broke through the bottleneck of a major realm and reached the Illumination Realm. Moreover, the first level of the Illumination Realm was far from the end of this advancement. As the power of the Chaos Divine Fruit was absorbed more and more by Shenran, Shenran began to feel that all living things in heaven and on earth have a sense of intimacy towards him. In the past, he had been the one living in this world. And at this moment, he was the world. Boom! Shenran continued to break through another realm. Second level of the Illumination Realm. In less than an hour, Shenran had directly broken through 5 realms. This speed surpassed all others of its kind before and since. There were neither predecessors nor successors. For a moment, a dazzling divine light shot from Shenran's body into the sky. It was clearly night time, but the entire sky was as bright as day. Rumble. Above the 9 heavens, a storm was brewing. Countless rays of light and bright immortal rays interweaved, and the divine sound of the great Tao resounded. An extremely profound and shocking phenomenon covered thousands of miles. At the same time, dense colorful clouds surrounded Shenran, rolling endlessly like the sea waves. In his body, there was a rich fragrance of the Chaos Divine Fruit that emitted and stretched for thousands of miles. At this moment, countless experts opened their eyes at the same time and looked in the direction of the Grand Myriad Mountains. Their eyes were filled with surprise and amazement. Immortal light interweaved, and the divine sound of the great Tao is played. This is the appearance of a peerless genius. Looking at the direction, it's very close to the Empyrean Sword Sect. Could it be that the Empyrean Sword Sect that has been silent for 1,000 years is really about to rise? In the depths of the first main peak of the Empyrean Sword Sect, the great ancestor slowly opened his eyes. This time, there was shock in his eyes. Illumination Realm. Second level. Shenran, are you finally going to step onto the stage of this world? Phew, Shenran slowly exhaled and ended the upgrade. He had completely digested the power of the Chaos Divine Fruit. When his eyes opened and closed, one could see endless 7-colored light moving in his ancient immortal eyes. Other than the ancient immortal eyes, all the other talents had been strengthened by absorbing the power of the Chaos Divine Fruit. It's time to return to the sect and deal with that spy from the demon sect, Wang Qingxian. Shenran muttered to himself. While Chen Beixian was walking along the road, he suddenly stopped. His heart felt empty, as if something very important had disappeared.